to stay with your home for just a few minutes here. If your house has become too much for you, when should you consider downsizing? And if you are in financial distress, should you be thinking about bankruptcy? Dean Wegner is the consumer finance expert on the show here and the author of Life After Foreclosure. It's a great book. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. That's so cool. And there's a big book for you, a little close-up. Nice to have you here. You've got some pretty disturbing statistics to share with us today. And the first one that you have for us is that nearly 5 million people are homeless or living with relatives. Really, in the country today?
Yes, they're victims of the recession, and they're living with people, and the average age is 24 years old, so a lot of people assume it's a mature adult, and it's not. And in fact, almost 1.5 million homeless people are under the age of 18.
Wow, isn't that amazing in our country today? We're really in these tough economic times.
We sure are.
So when you're talking about your house, you're looking at probably the biggest investment you've ever made. You're looking at probably the biggest payment you have every month. And before you walk out, there are some things that you should be looking at to just try to downsize everything that you possibly can. Where do we start with that?
Well, by far the most important is the budget. It's the most important, but it's also the most difficult. So you want to get a grasp on exactly what income is coming in, just like a business. You have revenues, so your income is your revenues. Then you have bills, which are your expenses. And then what's left over, ideally, is your profit. And if you're running a deficit, you have to go line by line and label it A, B, and C. A, is it a priority? I can't do anything about it. B, there's some room. And C, I can get rid of it. And prioritize those. And the thing that you have to understand is you can bring some of those things back in a year. Say, for instance, your nails. Well, you can do your nails yourself for a year until you get back on your feet. You're running a surplus. But those are some ideas that you can work on.
Even when you're talking, I mean, you look at that list, sometimes if you just write it down, of your needs and your wants, and it's amazing how much is in that want pile that you think is a need that's really not.
Exactly.
So you get rid of those?
Yes.
Okay, so now if you've brought your budget down to where you're still struggling with that mortgage payment, what are some other options there?
Well, you got to tackle the fixed expenses, and that would be things like your housing payment. If you're in a position where you can sell, or if you have to short sale to reduce that, then you'll have to face that. If you're renting, you can talk to your landlord and do what's called a consumer workout and see if they'll reduce that rent payment. But do anything you can so that you are running a surplus so that you can get back on your feet.
If you have to take in a renter, you could even do that if you own your house and you just can't get rid of it, right?
And that's a great idea, Connie. You can take in a renter. And then a good idea, too, is to count that on your tax return so that later on you can use that to qualify to buy a house potentially.
Yeah, anything you can do there. If you're still struggling and you're looking at bankruptcy, that's just such a big word for a lot of people because they think, gee, that's just never going to happen to me. And unfortunately, it's happening to a lot of people. What are some of those things you have to get your head around for bankruptcy?
Well, bankruptcy is a viable solution to your consumer debt problems. You want to acknowledge it as soon as possible, so take action. A lot of people say, well, I'm going to get out of my housing situation, then file bankruptcy. Do that first because you have to qualify for what's called a means test. And if you reduce your housing payment to a point, you may not qualify for a bankruptcy, and you find yourself, you're still in bad financial situation.
Okay, so watch the order in which you do that,
exactly.
But try to get your expenses
down. Take action.
Down. Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm excited about your book.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Out in just a couple weeks,
it's
right?
filled with a ton of money, financial survival skills, and it teaches you so many lessons. And after talking to about 3,000 people that have gone through this process, there's a lot of life lessons in there.
Very cool. Dean, thanks for being with us.
You're
We
very
appreciate
welcome.
it. Dean Wegner, always nice to have him with us.